Just a few weeks ago, I tweeted that I got a PSVR 2 and I've been trying out as many games as possible since then, so I could give you my impressions of the system about a year into its life cycle. To give you some background, I've had quite a bit of experience in VR. This is my third headset that I've owned. I previously had a PSVR 1 as well as a MetaQuest 2, and the MetaQuest 2, I only ever used it as a PC VR headset. I never used it on its own. I would always plug it into my computer and play Steam games. On the Quest 2, I played all of Boneworks, and I played quite a bit of Half-Life Alyx. On the PSVR 1, I mostly play a lot of Firewall Zero Hour, and I tried out a lot of different things like Minecraft and Hitman and stuff. But as we all know, that headset was not a super enjoyable experience compared to the competition that grew around it. And I've really looked forward to trying out the PSVR 2 since it came out, and especially since I edited the first Linus Tech Tips preview on the system around this time last year. And with that, let's jump into my impressions. I had some minor nitpicks with the whole setup process. The instructions were not super clear sometimes. For example, I was trying to set up my play area while standing up in my play space, which kept erroring out. But it worked smoothly when I finally sat down on the couch instead of standing up while doing it. But it didn't tell me to sit down on a couch, it just stopped working. And I also wanted to mention that this PSVR 2 is easily the most accommodating headset I've tried with glasses. I have a few different pairs of glasses, and the PSVR 2 fits all of them, though I still prefer to play with my smaller pair usually just because the prescription is not as strong as these ones. And it just lets my eyes relax a little bit more, especially when it's confined in that headset. The eye positioning settings and menus are really good in this system compared to the PSVR 1, but I was a little disappointed with the amount of aberration you can see around the edges of the lenses, but I think those are kind of unavoidable with this types of Fresnel lenses that they use. And then the eye tracking is just really insane. The foveated rendering that the system supposedly does is basically impossible to make out while you're actually in the headset, which is amazing. In some instances, you can actually use your eyes to navigate menus and such. And it's really just the craziest thing when you first try it. And of course, these screens are super nice, especially compared to the first headset. The OLED is really awesome. It gets super bright and contrasty, and the frame rates are really solid in all the games that I tried. And then the resolution on this headset is also really good. I would say that the pixels are small enough that you can't quite make them out individually, but there's also not an obvious screen door effect. But they're also not that small that you don't see anti-aliasing or jagged edges on some things. So it's kind of on the line between totally invisible and visible, especially when you get immersed in some of the more contrasty games. The controllers, they're pretty good. I think I still slightly preferred the Quest 2 controllers. I did this little hack that would let me use the wrist straps on the PSVR 2 controllers as hand straps. When I had a Quest 2, I bought these accessory hand straps that lets you fully let go of the controller. I think that helps with immersion a lot. So this little hack with these new controllers lets you do the similar thing. I've seen some accessories you can buy for this system as well, but I think I overall prefer the Quest 2 controllers just a little bit with the ergonomics and the way they feel in your hands. Just felt a little bit better to me. And then I also say that these controllers are a little bit confusing when you first glance or pick them up as to what hand they go in, but I think I'm getting used to it a little bit more. As for the headset itself, I really love the button on the bottom that lets you turn on the exterior cameras. It's a great way to jump in and out of the VR space. That doesn't make you have to pull off the whole headset. And the tracking seems about as good as the Quest 2 in my experience, other than some of those issues that I mentioned setting it up. I also want to say that I brought this unit for a really good price, about 400 Canadian. But the downside is that the person that sold it to me didn't include the official earbuds, so I had to use a different headset. But really, any pair of earbuds work great with this system, and my HyperX headset actually fit over the top of the whole headset, so that was really great for immersion and probably better sound quality than I would get from the official earbuds anyways. And the single USB-C cable setup with this headset is just awesome. And personally, I prefer having one wire over potential choppy wireless connection myself, and it's miles better than the PSVR 1's extra box and dozens of cables. That thing was such a hassle to set up, as we all know. And especially that way, there's no battery life issues with the headset. And the controller battery life seems okay to me so far. I do prefer charging to AA's, like on the Quest 2, but I know that's up to the taste of each individual. I just love having as many devices on USB-C charging as possible. But enough about the system, you've probably heard it all before. Let's talk about some games. I tried a whole bunch of different games to get a wider feel for what works well on this system. I tried Gran Turismo 7 and Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, of course. These are some of the higher profile VR games that I just needed to upgrade from the PS4 versions. And I tried some smaller indie games like Townsmen VR, Space Stalker VR, and ForeVR Bowl. Gran Turismo 7 just blew me away. It's hard to show this on video, but the menus and up until the countdown when you're about to jump into a race is all in the typical VR virtual display. And then during the countdown, it suddenly jump cuts into VR in the driver's seat, and it's just one of the sickest and cleanest transitions ever. And I also hadn't played Gran Turismo 7 with the DualSense controller up to this point either. So the haptic feedback on that was also super immersive. And then I just had a huge smile on my face the entire time I first tried that out. The way the mirrors actually work like they would in real life and just the amount of immersion is incredible. And I usually hate playing racing games in first person because it's too hard to see around corners and you can't really see the road sometimes, but this obviously is the most immersive way to feel like you're in the car and you can actually really spot the track and the turns just the way you would in real life. Except you're driving with a DualSense controller, but in some ways I'm more used to that than actual driving, so it just feels really natural. And I can really see why this game got so many people hooked on PSVR 2 and especially wanting to get steering wheel controllers because it's just that good. Moving on to The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. This is a game I've tried on every VR headset that I've owned, and it just keeps getting better every time. I think the OLED displays on the PSVR 2 just really made this game pop, and the amount of contrast in the dimly lit and spooky environments just made it super immersive. And I don't know what I can say about this game that hasn't already been said. It's one of the most popular VR games. It's just great. It's a great VR game, it's a great horror game, it's a great adventure game, and I look forward to playing deeper into this game than I have before. It's just one of the best VR games out there. I'll just leave it at that. Townsmen VR reminded me a lot of the old PC game Black and White, but more casual and a more carefree feeling since it's not about being literally a god. Unfortunately, this game made me very nauseous within 5 to 10 minutes of playing. I think partially due to how bright the art direction and game world is overall, but more so due to the floating head gameplay style and the way you navigate the game by grabbing the air around you just to move and zoom in. That was just too much for my brain. But your mileage may vary, as with all VR experiences. But to give you some background on the actual gameplay, basically it's sort of like a very light RTS or a city builder type game where you're just placing various buildings and houses to create villagers who can do various jobs like collecting resources or construction or combat when you get to some of the later stages. The fun thing is how you can zoom in and feel like you're standing in the middle of your town, or zoom out and then you can be like a god up in the sky and grab characters or objects in the game world. You can grab pretty much anything, animals, props, people. You can move them towards their objective or just throw them into the ocean or at each other or just wherever. It's actually pretty funny. With that said, I was actually having some issues where my omnipresent hands were causing mayhem without my intention when it was just sitting on my lap. But luckily they have a ghost hand setting that makes your hands clip through things unless you intend to pick them up. So that was perfect for me because I kept like hitting my villagers that were trying to do the objective I was trying to do, and then they're all just like drowning in the ocean when I look down at them. I wish this game didn't give me such a headache so I could get a bit deeper into the game and get a stronger grasp on some of the later stages, especially with combat and such, but that's the unfortunate reality of VR games. Some people get really nauseous in certain ones or just right away. I can usually play VR games for about 30 minutes before it starts to give me a headache, but this one just set something off in my brain that it didn't like. I hadn't tried a top-down style VR game like this before, so I'm glad I gave it a shot at least. Space Stalker VR, I actually got really into this game. It reminded me a bit of No Man's Sky, obviously because of the spaceship piloting aspect, but it's a much more focused and tight experience. You're just collecting cargo and dropping them off. It's a really fun mix of speed and precision, and I was just blown away by some of the high score times that people were getting in this game. Like, I thought I was doing pretty good in the first level, but these times were just like unbelievable. Anyways, I love the sense of momentum and disorienting nature of the controls if you're not careful, but I felt like I was a pro in no time, slamming e-brake and spinning my ship every which way. But yeah, it was super fun. At one point, a cargo container was shooting off into deep space, which gave me a very unique sense of dread as I sped away from the space dock, trying to match this container's speed and orientation. As I watched the home base shrinking away in the distance, that was a super cool experience. And if you really enjoy flying games, but want something a little bit more involved than just flying around, this is probably a really great choice for you. Next, I tried out ForeVR Bowl from the aptly named developer ForeVR Games. I actually enjoyed this quite a bit, though I don't have any friends, so I couldn't try out the full multiplayer aspect of it. I think this is more made to be a social bowling experience based on the controls and the features that it gives you. But regardless, I was really impressed by the atmosphere especially, and the amount of detail and freedom it allows for when you're in the bowling alley. And while this doesn't really contribute to the gameplay, I think having that feeling of freedom and immersion in the space is just so important in VR, especially in a game like this. Whereas if you were just locked to a couple square meters in front of the bowling lane and there was just like nothing else around you, it would feel pretty claustrophobic, and it just wouldn't give you that feeling of being in a bowling alley. With all that said, I recommend playing some of your own music or something, because it's kind of eerie to be in this bowling alley as well, especially by yourself, because there's just a couple of animated floating heads and background chatter going on around you, but it feels kind of empty still. Or just play with some friends online if you have any. There's even a camera so you can take candids of other people or selfies, and so I think that's why this game is really multiplayer focused, because it has features like that. And there are quite a few bowling alley options, ranging from realistic classic looking levels to more zany fun ones like being on the moon, although that didn't change the gravity as far as I could tell. And then there's hundreds of really cool unlockable and discoverable bowling balls that are all quite mesmerizing to look at. And I also want to talk about the controls, because bowling is a real sport, and the controls were actually pretty good. There was a little bit of choppiness. It might have had something to do with my hand movements going out of sight, but it didn't seem to bother me that much. And I didn't actually do a formal tutorial as far as I could tell, so I'm not sure if I was bowling optimally for the game. But I was mostly just trying to bowl as I would in real life, and it seemed to work out pretty well, and the physics seemed quite realistic. I think I was acting a little bit more restricted with my movements, especially my walk up to the lane, because of my limited play space, and I didn't want to hit my TV, of course, but I think it feels quite natural. So if you want a VR bowling game and you have friends out of town that you'd like to bowl with, this would be a good place to look. Is PSVR 2 worth it in 2024? I think if you can find a used unit for $400 or less, and you already have a PS5, yes it is. But at full price, it's a pretty tough sell. In Canada, it's like over $700, so I really don't think it's worthwhile to buy a new one. And there's also the recent news that PSVR 2 will be getting PC support sometime this year, and it sounds like Sony removed a lot of software roadblocks in this recent update, and most likely they'll be releasing some sort of USB dongle to make it work with PCs. So if you have a PC already, this might actually be an option you can consider soon as well, but I would say it depends on your budget and play space, because it's a low to mid-range priced VR headset, but it's got eye tracking and OLED screens, which are really cool features. But on the flip side, it doesn't have tracking base stations, so you'll probably have to do some more research to figure out what you want and need in terms of VR capabilities. And one thing about the lack of general support compared to PSVR 1 that disappointed me with this headset was that some of the bigger VR ports were left behind, especially Minecraft and Hitman 3. I would have really loved to give those games a try again on this new headset, but it seems like it's being quite neglected. I'm also going to link to extended gameplay videos of each of the games that I tried in this video. I'll put those links down below so you can check those out if you'd like. That's all for this episode. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And let me know what you think of the PSVR 2 and what you think of this video and what kinds of videos you'd like me to make more of in the future.